I have a job at the end. Oh, hello, people. Didn't know I was live, but that's okay. Hope you guys have had a great week. I've been pretty just secluded at home with my kids. We did do a social distancing outing yesterday, so that was fun. But I'm back here with some more algebra. So we have pretty much done a lot of the meat and potatoes of basic algebra. You know, we started out with like terms and learning about the different parts of algebraic expressions, and then we went to one-step equations, and then we went to two-step equations. And so now that we have those skills, we can put those skills to use with multi-step equations. And what does multi-step equation mean? Well, it means that I have more than two steps. And so I found this on the internet, and I'm like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I know that's not proper English, but oh well. I'm a math teacher. So this says the goal of solving equations is to get the variable on one side of the equal sign and the number on the other side of the equal sign. And I really like that because it goes back to our balance, our scales of justice, or the scales of algebra. So any equation that you have, no matter how many terms you have, on either side of the equal sign, if you can this basic principle, then you have all the skills you need to solve the equation. Okay, and I'm going to read these at home because I don't know how this is going to play off on television. These are the 5 steps or the 5 guidelines to solving multi-step equations. So the first thing you're going to look for is distributive property. And remember, distributive property is when we have a term on the outside of a set of parentheses, and what's on the inside of the parentheses cannot be put together. In other words, they're not like terms. Step 2 says combine like terms on the same side of the equal sign. So once we've gotten rid of the parentheses, we're going to look at the left side of the equation. Is there anything I can put together? Then we're going to look at the right side of the equation and ask ourselves the same question. Is there anything I can put together? Step 3 says if, and that's a key word there, if. There are variables on both sides of the equal sign, meaning there's a variable on the left and a variable on the right side of the equal sign. Gather them all to one side by adding or subtracting. And we're going to do a couple of those today. Step 4 is add or subtract the constant away from the variable. Step 5 is multiply or divide by the coefficient of the variable. And that's, of course, the number attached to x. Once you get to steps 4 and 5, we're back to 1 and 2 step equations. So really, it's steps 1, 2, and 3 that are going to be new to you today. But I'm confident that if you guys work along with me, you can be successful. Okay, so this is the first problem we have. We have 3x minus 4x plus 6 equals negative 2. So the first thing I'm going to ask myself is, do I see any parentheses? And the answer to that is no. So I'm going to go back to step 2, and that says put together any like terms. And I do have like terms. I have 3x and negative 4x. So I'm just going to do the math. 3x minus 4x is negative 1x. Now, I'm going to put that negative 1 in front of the variable since it's been a while that we've been together, just so you know, a variable by itself with no visible coefficient means 1. I'm going to bring down, and here, I'm just going to cross those out so that I know they've gone away. I'm going to bring down what I haven't used. Now, do I need to go back to those steps to figure out where I'm at? I can if I want, but I could also look at this and go, that looks really familiar to me. And that's because we're at a two-step equation. Step 3 on the previous slide that I showed you was if there's variables on both sides of the equation. And as you can see, we don't have that. So remember, those 5 steps are guidelines. You're not going to have every single step in every single multi-step equation that you do come across. So what's the first thing to move? -6. Or I should say the first thing to move is +6, and it becomes a -6. Remember, cancel that out because it goes away. And then we bring down what we haven't used. And then we just do the math. Remember, integer rules. Same sign, I keep the sign and I add my numbers. So now we're at the very last step. This says -1x equals -8. There's 2 different ways that we could have done this. If I didn't put the -1 in front, then it would just look like this. And generally, this is how you're going to see it written out. But I'm going to do both ways. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide both sides by -1. And that cancels out. Bring down the x. Bring down the equal sign. And of course, -8 divided by -1 is just 8. Okay. So when I taught Algebra 2, I used to tell my kids that whenever you see a negative in a formula, it means to do the opposite of. So this -x really is going to tell the other side to do the opposite. I like to tell my kids it's sort of magic because I'm a mathematician, duh. So anyway, this negative is just going to tell this -8 to do the opposite. And when we do that, we don't have to do this step. Is either one better? That's up to you. You know, you get to decide which way is easier for you to remember what to do. But either way, we get the same answer. And that's it. Remember, if you guys have any questions, you can feel free to go to my teacher page at sequoiaeagles.net and feel free, got my words jumbled up, to email me. And I'd be happy to help you with any questions you have. Okay. Oh, so now this does look different. We haven't seen any problems like this before. But let's go through our 5 guidelines. The first one, do we have any parentheses? The answer is no. So we're going to go to step 2. Are there any like terms that I have to put together? Now, some of you guys at home might be saying, oh, yeah, Mrs. Dorsey, I can put together the P's. No, you can't, because I'm looking at this side of the equal sign for like terms, and then I'm looking at this side of the equal sign for like terms. So none of these sides have like terms on the same side that I can put together. So let me go ahead and erase these circles so we're not confused once we go ahead and start solving. So step 1 and step 2, there's nothing we can do with. But step 3, if I have variables on both sides of the equal sign, then I need to group those together. And so this goes back to our first slide. Remember, in equations, we want all the variables on one side and all of the constants or the numbers on the other. So what I tell my kiddos in my classroom is, it's good habit to just always put your variables on the left side and the numbers on the right. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And remember back to my scale of justice. I want to balance it. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So here we go. I want to move this P to the other side because I want my variables on the same side. So if it's a positive p, it becomes a negative p, and then I move it over here, okay? Now, if I move something over to the left, I have to balance it out. So now I'm going to move something back over to the right. And the only thing to do is to move the positive 12. And if it's a positive 12, it becomes a negative 12. So now I'm going to subtract 12 right here. Now this might look pretty jumbled up to you, but if I ignore what I've crossed out and pretend like it's not there, and I just do the math, then I'm going to have a pretty simple problem. So negative 2p minus p is negative 3p. This one away, so I don't need to look at that. Down equal sign. 15 minus 12 is 3. And this one away, so I don't have to look at that. And I now have a one-step equation. So I'm going to do what, guys? You're right. I'm going to not multiply. See, you were right. I was wrong. I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. So I'm left with p equals negative 1. Because 3 divided by negative 3 is negative 1. Remember your integer rules. When I'm multiplying or dividing, if I have opposite signs, my answer is negative. Okay? And here we have a similar problem to what we just did. I don't have any parentheses, so I don't need to do distributive property. I don't have any like terms. There's no k's over here, and there aren't any other k's over here that I can put together. So what's the first thing I'm going to move? Remember, I want all of my variables on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So I'm going to move that negative 7k, and it's going to become a positive 7k. So it goes away, and it comes over here. So positive 7k. And remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So since I moved something to the left, I now have to move something to the right. So, and I'm going to use a different color so that's easy to see. If this is a positive 24, it becomes a negative 24. So now that goes away. And now we just do the math. Negative 4k plus 7k is 3k. And for those of you that are confused, how did I get 3k? Remember your integer rules of adding and subtracting. When they're opposite signs, I keep the sign of the bigger number and subtract. Okay, bring down your equal sign. And then same thing right here. I have a positive 12 and a negative 24. Those are opposite signs. And my rule says to keep the sign of the bigger number, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And now I just subtract. So 24 minus 12 is 12. And I am now at the one-step or two-step equation part of my multi-step equations. So 3k is multiplication, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, bring down my variable, bring down my equal sign, and just do the math. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Now, I want to remind you guys of some great online tools that you can use. I tell my kids that, you know, when we're in school, you don't have to just go by what I say. YouTube is a great resource, of course, with parental permission. Remember, my first week, I told you guys about Yay Math. Math Antics, Khan Academy. Those are all amazing YouTube video resources that you can just type in. You can type in multi-step equations, and then depending on which one of those resources you use, just type that after it, and it'll pull up a bunch of videos. And it will even pull up videos that I haven't watched, but watch them. You know, there might be another teacher out there that explains it in a way that you understand it other than me, and that's okay. You know, I don't get upset by that. And then you can share that resource with me, and then I can pass it along to my students. So, okay. Another equation like we just did. 7 minus m equals 5m minus 5. Now, I do want to remind you guys that in the earlier equations that we were solving, I said, now some of you guys are going to look at that equation and automatically go, hey, I don't have to show my work because I know what I'm doing. I can just look at the equation and figure out the answer. And I said, what? Nah, you might not always be able to do that. And this is one of those equations. Now, I have some students, you know, Aiden, Riker, that are probably going to sit in their desk and try to figure that answer out before showing their work. Show your work. Love you guys. Okay, so remember, I don't have parentheses. I don't have like terms on either side of the equal sign that I can put together, so that takes me down to step 3 or guideline 3. Variables on both sides of the equal sign. Remember, I want everything that has a variable to go to the left. Everything that doesn't have a variable to go to the right. So that's what I'm going to do. The opposite of 5m is negative 5m. Ooh, m. And so that goes away. Remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So if I move something over to the left, I have to move something to the right. So that positive m becomes negative 7. Now, I just do the math. Negative 1m minus 5m is negative 6m. And for those of you at home, if you wanted to write in 1 in front of the m, that's totally fine, and I'll be repeating that over and over again, just so you know. Negative 5 minus 7 is negative 12. And then, of course, I'm going to look at that and go, oh, that's a one-step equation. I know what I'm doing. And hopefully, you guys have really started to get the hang of this at home, because I'm confident that you guys have all the skills you need to be successful in math and to be successful with these kinds of concepts. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6 and solve my equation. Negative 12, negative 6 is positive 2. Okay? I do want to recommend a movie to watch. It's called The Man Who Knew Infinity. It is a movie about an Indian Hindu mathematician, Ramanujan. It is amazing. It's not free. You do have to buy it off of Amazon. It might be free on Netflix. I haven't looked, but I do own the movie, and I show that to my classes every year. And I have kids at the beginning that say, "Oh my gosh, Mrs. Dorsey, this is going to be such a boring movie." They love it. So I highly recommend it. Okay, so we have another problem like we just did. So this time I'm going to just do the problem, and then you say the steps out loud at home, okay? Now, did you ask yourself or say it loud? No parentheses. No like terms on either side of the equal sign. Good for you if you did. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And now I can just do the math. 3x minus 4x is negative x. I'm not going to write down the 1, okay? You can at home if you want to. And then negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. Now remember, what does the negative x mean? It's magic. It's going to tell the other side to change its symbol by doing the opposite. So we have x equals 3. I do want to mention this. There are some math teachers that require you to show the step. That's okay. Not all math teachers teach the same, and there's nothing wrong with that, because that's the great thing about math. There's never one way that you have to do things unless your teacher tells you to, okay? Us teachers support each other. Next slide. Okay, I am going, I'm going to skip that one because I feel like we've done enough of those. You should have a good handle on that. But this one we are going to do. So let's think back. Step 1 says parentheses. This problem doesn't have any. Step 2, like terms. Yes. Those of you that said, Mrs. Dorsey, we've got like terms, you'd be correct, because look at this. I have 2x minus x on the left side of the equal sign, and I go ahead and put those together. 2x minus x just gives me x. So now I'm going to rewrite the entire problem. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper here. If you were in Algebra 1 or in Algebra 2, you wouldn't have to go any further, because you might be able to say, oh, the answer is identity. What does identity mean? Well, I think of identical twins. These are the exact same problem. So that means they're identical, or identity property, but we're going to solve it anyway. You can just tell your math teacher next year if you're in the 7th or 8th grade, and they're going to think you're a genius. So I'm going to move this x over here. And I'm going to move this 3 over there. So x minus x is 0. Do not put 0x, and here's why. If you put 0x, what is 0 times x? 0. That's why you don't do that. Bring down your equal sign. 3 minus 3 is 0. So when you get to a problem where 0 equals 0, that's when you know that your answer is identity. Okay? Okay, because we are running low on time, I want to go to, we're going to do the problem on the left. So here I have, actually, you know what? Forget that. I can change my mind. We're going to do the problem on the right. I have parentheses, and the first thing you're going to want to do is say, oh, let's do the distributive property. And I'm going to tell you that is the long way. Parentheses also mean what? Multiplication. Very good. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So why can't I just divide both sides by 2 to get rid of that thing on the outside? I can. It's a beautiful thing. So 2x plus 1 plus x equals 10. I have like terms that I need to put together. I've got 2x plus x, which gives me 3x. So those go away. Bring down what I haven't used. Now I have just a regular two-step equation. So I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides. Okay? And I get 3x equals 9. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. and then I'm going to have x equals 3. I just want to talk about a couple of things before we wrap our time up here together. There's a lot of different rules in algebra. And for example, if this answer was like 8/3, you would leave your answer as 8/3. So like in algebra, we don't use the x for multiplication, we use a dot. We don't turn our answers into mixed numbers, we leave them improper. So it's important to remember those things, that it's okay if you're confused at the beginning, but listen to your teacher. Let them guide you through the land of algebra. It really is a fun place to be, all right, especially if I'm your leader. So next week, that's it for my lesson. Next week, we're going to take a break from doing regular math, and I'm going to share with you my real passion, and that is the history of mathematics. We're going to talk about some incredible mathematicians that have shaped these girls in here. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. And we're going to talk about the mathematicians that have shaped our world as we know it. And I promise you, you will never look at math the same way again. So remember, if you have questions, reach out to me through Google Classroom if you're one of my students. Reach out to me through my teaching at sequoiaheagles.net. Look for me under the middle school, and I would be happy to help you. Don't forget, Khan Academy, great app to use. Also on YouTube, Yay Math, and I know I keep saying that, but these are great websites or YouTube resources that I really want to encourage you to look at. Yay Math, Math Antics. Math Antics, the guy's kind of silly, but they take it step by step and make it fun. So today I want to challenge you to go out into the world and find something related to math. Share it with me on my YouTube video that RSU has generously provided, and we will see you next week. Bye.